right, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Again, the topic is advancing mobility with right-sized driverless fleets. We have Ain McKendrick. He is the founder and CEO of Faction. Before establishing Faction, Ain served as VP of engineering at Starsky Robotics, where he led the team that pioneered the first fully driverless semi-trucks on public roads in North America. He was a senior director of Netflix's partner products team, playing a pivotal role in bringing Netflix instant streaming to connected consumer devices. Throughout his career, Ain has founded several startup ventures and began his journey in the tech industry as one of the founding members of Palm Computing. Now, that's a little while ago. Who would remember that? Where he contributed to the development of the original PalmPilot PDA. Do you remember PDAs? A little while ago. All right. Join me in welcoming Ain.
All right, so my name is Ain McKendrick. I'm the founder and CEO at Faction. And at Faction, what we're focused on is right-sizing driverless vehicle fleets. And part of this is how do we fit the vehicle to the mission. As was mentioned during my intro, I kind of got my start in technology as one of the founders of Palm Computing back in the 90s. And I figured it would be fun to bracket at least one of the things I worked on a long time ago with the vehicles we're doing now today. And for those who remember the PalmPilot, it actually had a handwriting recognition system on it. So you could argue that I've been working on AI types of systems for almost 30 years now. But the one thing that was unique about the system in the PalmPilot is we did actually train it with real human data, people's samples of their handwriting, and it was designed to be very quick and efficient to recognize when you would write on the device and recognize your characters. A little fact with this, though, is that the code and the data for doing that system fit in 48K, which, compared to today's very large model AI systems, is infinitesimal. It's really small. But the reason being is that Jeff Hawkins, who was the founder of Palm, had an affinity for thinking about how the human brain would work. And he has a book out called On Intelligence that talks about his theories. But this influenced me very young in my career about how you would fit the technology to the application. And so when you bracket this with the vehicles you see on the other side of that slide, we take a very similar approach. We have to be able to fit AI at the edge to the mission we're trying to accomplish. And you can't do one size fits all where you use a very heavyweight approach for everything. Otherwise, you're going to build systems that are not efficient. And that was very much kind of influenced by what I learned in the early days of Palm. And so today I'd like to share a little bit about what we're up to at Faction and the problems we're trying to solve. And so if you look at urban mobility today, it's horribly broken. We're filling the cities with large vehicles, cars, trucks. It's leading to gridlock and congestion. It's pollution. It's basically destroying the quality of life for anybody who lives in city centers. And part of our challenge at Faction is how do we start to fix this problem? Having a little bit of fun with AI image generators, I asked, give me an example of dirty energy versus clean energy. And this is what it came up with. So even an AI image generator knows that there's a difference between oil as a dirty solution and wind or solar as a clean solution, essentially implying EV for vehicles. If you were to also ask an AI engine for images, give me an example of a robot delivering a sandwich and a car delivering a sandwich, it's not lost on even the simple pattern matching that it should probably be a pretty big sandwich if you're going to use a car for delivering it. And I like to make the joke that bringing any of us a pizza in a 4,000-pound electric car with 300 miles of battery range is a little bit of overkill. But we do have to transition the fleets into things that are actually clean, and EV is one of those tools. But how are we doing? If you use charging infrastructure as a proxy for the rollout of electric vehicles, we're falling far behind. The one example here that's doing well is China. So China has actually deployed more electric vehicle infrastructure than all the rest of the world combined. And especially when you look at fast charging, they're way ahead of all the rest of us. On top of that, last mile logistics is one of the most expensive parts of the supply chain. And if you look at the costs within last mile, 64% of the cost is driver wages as well as fuel. Two areas you can directly attack with autonomy and electric vehicles. On top of that, Most of the deliveries we're doing for last mile right now, especially when you look at the gig economy, of the deliveries done in 2022, which is 1.8 billion deliveries, the majority of those are being done in internal combustion vehicles, typically older vehicles as well. And if you can transition those systems into using light electric vehicles, you're looking at over a 90% reduction in the carbon footprint of those operations. And so at Faction, we wanted to right-size not only the vehicles, but also the technology approach for how we would actually deploy these fleets. And so what we did is we started with light electric systems, vehicles like you see on the left-hand side here, and we incorporate a baseline driverless system, which is a dual GPU system for redundancy, cameras, both visual and thermal. We also use radar on these vehicles. But then we augment it with humans when necessary, and we call our system teleassist. It's very important. If you notice, there's no steering wheel and pedals there. These are basically operations acting like an air traffic controller or like a drone pilot for the ground. This is a stark contrast to traditional autonomy that's been done over the last few years, where they're typically hauling around a data center in the trunk of a car. And this was a conscious decision on our part to be able to right-size the technology package, because if you compare us to like a robotaxi implementation, our vehicles are dramatically smaller in terms of the cost of the vehicle, as well as, most importantly, the power of the vehicle. If you were to take one of those traditional autonomy stacks and put it on one of our vehicles, literally if you turn it on, it would kill the battery in an hour and a half without even driving a single mile. And so this was a case of not only right-sizing the fleets, but also right-sizing the technology solutions. And so here's what it looks like in practice. So this vehicle you see here, this is running in South San Francisco. And if you see a purple line on the monitor there, that means the vehicle's operating in autonomous mode. And what it's doing is it's coming up on a double parked car, at which point the vehicle will alert operations and say, can I get some assistance? So then a human can connect to the vehicle, very much like an air traffic controller, and then they can provide input to that vehicle on how it can get around that obstacle. And so think of it like a virtual train system, but you can move the tracks on occasion. But two very important things happen here. One is we just unblocked the autonomous vehicle to get it back on mission and continue its job, but that's also training data. And so that data now flows back into the system so that the next time the vehicle encounters a scenario like this, it can suggest to the operator about taking a path around that obstacle. And so the value there is because our cost center is actually the human. And so if you can take that human interaction from 30 seconds down to 2 seconds, where they just say, oh yeah, it looks good, and hits a button, I've just saved myself a dramatic amount of time on the workstation, and my fleet of operators can handle more vehicles. And this was a conscious decision to say, keep the AI on the vehicle light, but then the AI that we use in the cloud for the operators can be heavier weight and more context aware. But it's very similar to how we might use ChatGPT on checking an email, or sometimes I'll even use that for an investor update. But you would never let it loose on your inbox, and you'd never let ChatGPT drive your car, but it can augment and help you. And so that's kind of the theory behind using the heavier weight AI systems for helping the humans. And so the net effect is that we can have a couple operators handle a larger number of vehicles in the fleet. It's a win-win across the board, because instead of being a gig worker in a vehicle, you can come work in an ops center, and we can pay you a much better wage, because now you're a much more productive employee. You're actually able to do more work. At the same time, these vehicles are much more cost-effective to operate. So we can pass those savings on to our customers, who then go into the end consumers like you and I whenever we're placing an order for delivery. We are also very passionate at Faction about doing urban mobility solutions, where you can request a vehicle, have it come to you, and you can drive it yourself. But I will mention that from a business perspective as a startup company, and when you scale, we still have to solve some of the problems here with what are the right economics, because these vehicles don't turn as frequently as the logistics systems. And so we're very much focused on the logistics vehicles right now, even though I have a soft spot in my heart for wanting to really solve urban mobility for all of us too. But we started with a commercial bakery here in the Bay Area. That was our first customer. This is back in 2022. And the goal was to prove the use case. I love B2B logistics because it's the same routes 7 days a week. It's very repetitive, which is fantastic for autonomous vehicles. And we were even told by this bakery that they had tried to use gig services for B2B for doing deliveries, but they said, we'll ship 50 cupcakes to a coffee shop in the morning, and occasionally one of those cupcakes is missing. can't really blame the driver for that on occasion. I have a soft spot for cupcakes, but at the end of the day, they wanted the consistency. And if something happens with tampering with a commercial shipment, that's where you end up getting a shipment rejected. And so this year, we actually launched with Chick-fil-A in Houston, Texas. And so it's fully integrated with their app experience. You place an order, it goes to the kitchen to produce that order. They load a vehicle. You as the customer get a text message that your order's on its way. We even include a little fun little GIF to explain what's about to happen. And then you can meet that vehicle curbside and retrieve your order. The nice thing about this system is we can beat every gig worker in terms of the time and efficiency, or the gig services, I would say. We do it less than 23 minutes to usually from the moment you hit go. And we talked a little bit earlier in one of the other panels about what matters to customers. And in this case, it's what they call 10-10-10. 10 minutes to prep an order, 10 minutes to drive an order, and 10 minutes to have somebody retrieve it. And we found that with these systems, we can beat that easily. And that's an improvement across the board compared to what we do today with humans. The technology, of course, can be applied to any vehicle type. And I really like light electrics, especially for the urban use cases. But we envision a future at Faction where we always fit the vehicle to the mission. So if you need a larger vehicle, you may be able to deploy a larger vehicle. And in some applications, yeah, it would make sense. But the small vehicles are really an opportunity to affect this change where we get ourselves out of trying to use the car as one size fits all. And it's one of these rare projects where not only is it fun from a technology perspective and it's engaging, you can build a good business around it. If we do our job right, we're actually improving the life for all of us when you think about the roadways too. So I appreciate everybody's time. If you want to learn more about Faction, there's a QR code there that will just take you to our website. Always happy to talk technology. It's one of my favorite subjects. And this is one of the areas where I've been very passionate about for the last several years. But thank you very much for the time.